Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Ground Pound Comics. This came out in 1987. It was published by Blackthorn Publishing, which was a small publisher in the mid to late 80s that arose from the ashes of Pacific Comics. Kind of a shame because Pacific Comics is one of my favorite independent comic publishers of the 80s. Almost everything they did was pretty damn good. Big name artists, great titles. But then Blackthorn, strangely enough, it was just, I don't think there's one comic that they published that I would even want to own except for this one. So this is very weird that they published this. Around this time, they were publishing like all these 3D titles, crappily done 3D titles, licensed books, a few original stuff, and none of them seemed to ever find any traction. Their basically distribution model was to release a comic and to just sell it through quarter bins, because that's what it seemed like would happen. These would all be in quarter bins. But lucky for you, even this one was. And this is a great comic. This is a reprinting, I think the majority of John Pound's underground work from the early to mid 70s. And John Pound, we've seen him before on the channel. Great underground comic artist. Very slick, professional style. Kind of reminds me of William Stout in that aspect, where just every panel's pretty perfect. Just really fine cartooning. But you probably might know him best from painting the majority of the Garbage Pail Kids cards. Actually, he might have painted them all. I don't know. But that was his gravy train for quite a while. This is a new cover he made for this 1987 comic. And it's not up to the normal John Pound standards that I expect. It's pretty damn good, but it's, I don't know. It seems like John Pound kind of gave up comics, you know, due to his graphic design success, working for Topps and other things like that. It's a pretty fun concept, though. It's like him, he's jumping into this meat grinder and pulling the crank, and all of this Technicolor imagery is flowing out of the grinder. Kind of a fun concept. And obviously he's paying homage to the old Warner Brothers cartoons here with the background coloring. His introduction from Mark Evanier, his childhood friend and frequent collaborator. So we start off with a story that's reprinted from Gory Stories Quarterly number 2, 1971. He's still a teenager at this point, and I think Gory Stories Quarterly was not really an underground, it was like a fanzine. But this is I think written by Dave Clark and drawn by John Pound. So Ronald's surprise birthday party, Ronald's walking through the funny animal land. And it seems like every time he comes up to a friend, they kind of make a quick excuse and like run off. Like, oh, I forgot to take the laundry out of the dryer. Where'd it go? He sees a bunch of his friends here. They're all having a great time. When he shows up, they do the same thing. They make excuses and run out of there. As you can see by this cartooning, I mean, this guy, John Pound could have worked for like Dell Comics. I mean, he's a teenager and he's mastered this like just total classic funny animal cartooning style. So then he sees this flyer float down from the sky, and it's a list of names for a party, and everyone's invited except for him. And then he starts crying. He's like, nobody likes me. That's why everyone's been running away from me. And he says, I might as well go home. And when he opens the door, everyone's there, and they yell, surprise. Happy birthday, Ronald. Surprise. And he has a happy tear in his eye. And this is where like a comic from Walt Disney's Comics and Stories would end, you know? Just this cute little gag at the end. But then it takes a weird turn. His hippo buddy says, we're going to fix you a surprise birthday dinner. And you're it. And they all grab him. And they cook him up and eat him. That's the end. Very odd ending. So this next one is The Jolly Adventures of Pete Pig and his Magic Hat Band. And this is another one from Gory Stories Quarterly, this time number 2.5. Let me check the date on that. Yeah, this is 1972 now. It's kind of a funny gag. Pete's falling out of this airplane, and he says, "Only my magic hat band can save me now." Here it is, the big moment of truth. Splat. It didn't work. Pretty goofy. Do-it-yourself monster makeup, number 147, the Wolfman. Look how he totally imitates that Warren magazine style. He's just a great graphic designer, John Pound. His logos are always impeccable, and so it's written up as like it's from an old monster mag. I guess it's like find a guinea pig, someone who wants to be turned into a werewolf. And then it starts getting gruesome. He slices off the kid's face, scalps him, puts the scalp on the front of his face, where his face used to be, so he's all hairy. He takes the old face, puts it on the top of his head. He makes these crazy werewolf ears by just stretching them. Puts in fangs. Of course, every step is very painful and repulsive. Fun stuff. That was from that Gory Stories too. This next one is Ronald Rabbit again. This is from Death Rattle #1, the Great Horror Underground. And Ronald Rabbit introduces the comic by saying, "I just killed a cartoonist. From now on, I'm drawing all my own strips." Let me tell you how it started. Just wanted to point out, look at this great drawing here. The trees, the shading. It's so good. So Ronald's on a picnic date with his girlfriend, and Pete Pig shows up. And so now Pete Pig's not the same Pete Pig he was in that first story. He's a total asshole. I guess him and his friends constantly play practical jokes on Ronald, and they make his life miserable. Pete throws a pie at his face. Ronald chases him, which just leaves him open for more pranks, because as he's searching for Pete through the woods, they commit all these other pranks on him, and they're all laughing at him. And Ronald's had enough. He punches Pete in the face. His wolf buddy, Pete's wolf buddy, smashes him with this giant gavel or sledgehammer. Pete tries to shoot Ronald, but he accidentally shoots his wolf buddy, and then it just turns into a typical crazy cartoon melee. And Ronald realizes, I'm always getting screwed over by the cartoonist. But then things got even worse. And it's almost like the cartoonist is fucking with him. Every corner he takes, every move he makes, just horrible things are happening to him. He even drops an A-bomb on him. Man, that's a great panel right there. And then I love this part. He says, "That I've had enough. I'm getting out of this damn comic strip. I quit." And we see him stepping out of the comics page. Really well done with the shading and everything. It's almost 3D. He pops out of John Pound's drawing table, out of the page, and he kills John Pound. Very gruesomely. So then he buries him, and he realizes that he's free. He's going to draw his own stories. He's going to run the business the way he always wanted to. Really build on this business. He's going to hire a whole staff of cartoonists to draw for him. He's going to put out, 50 titles, all with Ronald Meets King Kong, Ronald in Wonderland, Ronald Meets Shell Dwarf, Death Rabbit. I love this one here, Ronald the Barbarian. He does a spot-on Frank Frazetta imitation parody. He's going to open an amusement park. He's got all these great ideas that Pound never would have let him do. That dumbass cartoonist would turn over in his grave if he could hear me. And we see John Pound's grave. His epitaph is "Created Ronald Rabbit." And there's a rumble underground. He continues to fantasize about the groupies and the money, the celebrity. And meanwhile, John Pound is crawling out of the grave. Man, look how great that is as far as EC homage, Walking Dead stuff. It's really well done. And of course, he goes to Ronald Rabbit and throttles him. And I guess he just collapses into a bunch of bones. And we see Ronald's last death rattle. This next one is called The Wishing World. This was in Graphic Story Monthly, which was a prozine. That's what they called them. They were fanzines that were really well made and well done. Great printing, production values, getting real pros to like do stories for them or interviews. And Graphic Story Monthly, if you can ever get your hand on any of them, they're all gold. They're amazing. So this appeared in there, and this is written by Mark Evanier and drawn by Pound. We see this perfect EC homage here. The dialogue, as per usual for Mark Evanier, it's like there's like 50 jokes a page. Some of them are pretty corny, but every now and then there's something pretty funny in here. They're pretty funny, some of the gags. And when we turn the page, we realize that it's just this kid, Billy Nussbaum, reading an old weird fantasy. And we find out through this narrator, God Serling, that Billy is fascinated by EC Comics. He's got a bust of William Gaines on his table here. He's got an EC rug. He prays to God every night to God bless Harvey Kurtzman and to get him Weird Science number 6. So I guess he has a recurring dream. It's his favorite dream. He takes a time machine back to 1954, finds an old bookstore, and buys like every EC comic for a nickel a piece. But this time the dream takes a different turn. This old lady starts whacking him with her umbrella. She's like, "Oh, you read those horrible comics, you juvenile delinquent." And then he's transported to this very EC sci-fi scenario. He says, "Oh boy, one of those sexy sci-fi chicks." And I don't know if you've noticed, but the lettering all of a sudden for the captions is that EC lettering. Letraset? Is that what it was called? And I like this how Mark Evanier kind of plays with the comic form. She says, you're within the pages of a science fiction comic. Billy reached up to inspect the words floating overhead, and he does just that. She says, "You must recognize the lettering," and he rips the caption off of whatever it's attached to, the void. And I kind of like this. Then he places it down. He says, "I'll just put this here for the moment, for the time being." And then this giant monster attacks. Really well drawn. A very goofy monster. And he grabs the woman, and Billy is so fascinated by this comic book world. In this panel, he looks up and sees that caption. He says, "Hey, I did that 4 panels ago." He's totally ignoring this woman's pleas for help. And she's obviously being devoured. We can tell by the sound effects. Has a lot of goofy EC inside jokes. Spaffon, Squatrant, Squaffon, Sea Hunt. So he runs away and gets onto this spaceship that looks just like one from a panel in a story of incredible science fiction. Except this one has a gumball machine and a laundry machine. This other sci-fi woman comes in and she says, "That's a visiphone call for my brother on Pluto, if you don't mind." Because he's like, "Wow, Star Trek's on." This guy just happens to look like Mr. Spock. Excuse me. He says, "Your ship is in danger. There's going to be a meteor shower. You have to activate your force field." He's actually sitting on Pluto the dog from Disney. That's the kind of level of some of the gags in here. She's sending out a red alert, and this little red alert goofy guy pops out. This other guy shows up and says, "Cosmic particles are wreaking havoc with our cellular structure." And he turns into this total mutant. I really like these panels here too. So then I guess the shields don't stand up to the meteors. So this sci-fi chick says, "Oh, we have only a few precious moments together before we die. Come join me in this bed." which is kind of weird because he's a little boy. And, you know, he's a little boy. He's just like, doesn't get it. So we see the meteors crashing through. And then he falls through the floor, and he falls right into the den of the 3 horror hosts. Impeccably drawn. Look at that. John Pound's a really good mimic, too. Whatever he draws like someone else, he just nails it. And so they truss him up and put an apple in his mouth, and they start cutting him open for dinner. I like this. It says Jewish cooking. His name's Nussbaum. They put a rectal meat thermometer up his butt. That's a fun ending. And then God Serling rounds out the tale in easy fashion. A Boy and His Dorg. And this is from this, I assume it's a fanzine. It's called Dorg Sheet Digest from 1973. It looks very much like Uncle Creepy if he was a little hipper. And we see this is kind of weird because this kid's name is Billy Nussbaum and he's really into comic books. His father hates the fact that he is. And he's always like beating up his son, saying, you better stop reading these comics. Look at this little Peter Max homage. He even signs it Peter Max. So the kid decides to run away. He's actually not a kid. We find out from this random caption. He's a 48-year-old midget. He runs away with his dog, and then they see this monster made of poop. And he grabs the Billy's dog, throws the dog in his mouth, and eats him. Billy's crying, and then the shit monster's going to grab Billy. But Billy starts whacking it, and whacking him repeatedly. Meanwhile, the father is on the lookout for his son. He's trying to track him down. So, of course, he's in a Sherlock Holmes hat. That old gag, you know? And the shit monster grabs him and eats him. And the last panel shows Billy and the poop monster walking off hand in hand like they're friends now. Off to have some more adventures. So this next one is from Comix book number 1. I believe this was like the mid-70s. This Comix book was an underground published by Marvel Comics. It's almost hard to believe it happened. There's actually a whole hardcover book reprinting the stories from Comix book and telling the fascinating story of how Stan Lee decided to publish an underground comic. It was on newsstands all across America. Didn't sell that well, though. Didn't last that long. So this is a lot of underground comics refused to be in it because it wasn't like an underground comic. You couldn't do anything. S. Clay Wilson couldn't have done his stuff for Comix book. So everyone was kind of toned down in it. I think John Pound, came from the fanzine world, graphic design world. He didn't really care. So, I mean, this is pretty tame for an underground, but, it's got some nipples in it and stuff. So we see this Flip the Bird's stealing a pie off the windowsill. And he overhears the lady of the house tell her husband that she'll be back in a few hours, but you have to let the interior decorator in so I can take a look at the house. So Flip has an idea. After the wife leaves, Flip shows up and pretends he's the interior decorator. First thing he does is raid the refrigerator. He says, this refrigerator is too cluttered. And after he eats everything, he says, much better. It's nice and clean and simple. And then he just starts to terrorize this poor guy and wreck the house. He's like a fucking horrible character. He's like Bugs Bunny, but even meaner because this guy didn't do anything to piss off Flip. He's just a nice guy. And he saws the sofa in half. Brings in this tree. He's just tearing up the whole house. He rips this original Maxfield Parrish painting. The guy's just crying. He's like, what are you doing? I like he replaces the painting with a Hustler centerfold. And finally, the guy loses his shit. I like that panel a lot. And just starts chasing Flip around. But Flip is always getting the best of him. And this guy's getting pretty beat up. God, this cartooning here is just perfect, funny animal cartooning. I wish when I was a kid there was a funny animal comic drawn like this. Beautiful stuff. So then he finally realizes he better skedaddle, and he's running out the front door, and who should be coming up the path but the real interior decorator? He kind of looks like Dolly. And he runs, and then behind the interior decorator is the lady of the house. And he runs right into her and knocks himself out. So the last panel, we see the injured husband and the wife, and the husband is saying, "That decorator is pretty clever. I like the mantelpiece he came up with." And it's Flip the Bird stuffed and mounted. Pretty just desserts there. It's I was actually happy that he got his comeuppance. I was like, oh, good. I would have been really bummed if Flip the Bird didn't get needed some justice. Now we got Dr. Flip, featuring Flip the Bird once again from Comix book, 1975. So I guess Flip is pretending to be a psychiatrist this month. And he's fooling around with this girl inside. And he kind of puts her in this closet. He says, I got to take this appointment. I need some money. So he basically sees dollar signs in his eyes. He just is going to fleece this guy for all he's worth. So this poor guy, he fucking found out he had a brain tumor. It's fatal. He says, my wife, remember the one you cured her of her frigidity? And Flip the Bird's basically implying like, oh yeah, she was a good lay. I mean, a very devoted layman of the church. So he obviously was fucking his wife. He says that his wife now is having all these affairs and wants a divorce. So he left the wife with his daughter. And she's been smoking dope and hanging out with the wrong crowd. He says beating her just made things worse. She ran away. So I guess this guy's not such a nice guy. And so he's terribly worried about his daughter. I like this the whole time. Flip doesn't give a shit. He's reading a porn mag. He's playing with his yo-yo. So this guy says, recently I've been thinking about ending it all. I can't go on with this rotten life. And that's why I came to see you. And Flip says, oh, you want advice on committing suicide? He's like, no, I'm here for hope. I don't want to die. Flip keeps trying to convince him, maybe you should kill yourself. But then he realizes, okay, he wants the guy's money. So he gives him a hit of LSD. And this just show what a dick Flip is. Instead of putting on nice, soothing new age music, he puts on sound effects for horror films, a record. So the guy's going to have a bad trip probably. While he does that, he runs back into the closet to continue having nookie with this girl. And meanwhile, we see the guy just tripping hard and not tripping good. This is a bad trip. Great cartooning here. I love this. He's all wavy because he's hallucinating. So he can't take it anymore. He says, I got to get out of here. But he accidentally goes into that closet instead of exiting the office. And he's like, that's my daughter you're having sex with. It's just by coincidence, it's Flip is fucking the daughter. And he jumps out the window in despair. He can't take it anymore. Of course, Flip doesn't give a shit. He says, by the way, kid, I'm giving you an A on your pelvic exam. Man, he's such a bastard. This one was in the San Diego Comic-Con program book, 1978. Man, I love this shit. It's called Dreams. And it's just John Pound just doing some surreal, crazy, dreamlike shit. Every panel in this is pretty fucking great. Man, I would love a book, like a 100-page book of just pages like this. This is just beautiful to me. Really nice stuff. Smokey the Bear and Bob's Big Boy. Oh, beautiful. So now we got another Flip story, also from Comix book, 1975. So now Flip the Bird has got an auto lot. And this woman wants to buy a car. He takes her on a test drive. He's also kind of flirting with her. It's like, ooh, she's a honey. So he succeeds. She's like, yeah, I love this car. I want to buy it. And she tells Flip, she says, but you know what would really seal the deal? Make love to me. And so Flip's all like, all right. And he starts making out with her. And he reaches under her dress. And he's like, you're a guy. Get out of my car. And his wig falls off. And, well, I guess her. And he's like, I ain't going to make love to no drag queen. So Flip the Bird's kind of homophobic. Well, obviously, very homophobic. So he goes back to the lot. He's like, God, I got to make a sale. I fucked up that one. And the seedy-looking guy wants to go for a test drive. Turns out he's a heroin dealer. And he pulls out a gun and says, yeah, I like this car. In fact, I'm taking it. Get out. So Flip makes his way back to the lot. He's just really bummed. He's like, I really got to make a sale this time. And this guy looks like an easy mark. Looks kind of like a dotard. And it looks like he's going to buy the car. But then I don't know. I think Flip is the kind of guy who even when things go his way, he's going to fuck it up. Because he's a fucking sociopath. So he says, well, I'll show you how much power this car has. You'll definitely want to buy it after I show you. And he starts driving like a maniac. And this guy's freaking out. He's like, please stop the car. I have a heart condition. So he jumps out of the car. So Flip loses another sale. He's not paying attention to the road because he's looking behind him, shaking his fist at that guy. And he crashes right into this art museum, which is holding an outdoor sculpture contest. A $10,000 prize. Look at that classic, just cartoony. You know, like John Pound is just... He really would have been a great artist for Dell Comics back in the 50s and 60s. So we see these like people from the museum and art critics. They're all like, what just happened? And Flip tries to basically bullshit these guys. He's like, what you've just witnessed is a spontaneous creative act in which I've used a mass-produced object to create a unique, highly expressive form, signifying and representing a multitude of things. And they're just like, whoa, it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He could either be a faker or a modern artistic genius. Let's just give him the prize to be on the safe side. So the museum director gives him the $10,000, but then takes it right back to pay for the repairs for the damage that he caused. So once again, he walks defeated back to his car lot. And I guess because of the TV report of his winning this art prize, he's like a celebrity, and this car lot is full of people who want to buy cars. So it ends happy for Flip, which annoys me because I want things to end poorly for him. This one is called The Maltese Phallus. Once again, co-written by Dave Clark. They partnered up a lot. This is a typical, parody of the Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe type gumshoe story. Beautiful woman comes to Flip the Bird's office. She has this Maltese Phallus, which is just worth a lot of money. She says that all these guys have been trying to kill her for it. And we see these guys pop up out of everywhere, every nook and cranny, and Flip takes them all out. And then he has sex with her behind his desk. It's a tough life being a private dick, but what the hell? Oh man, this is like some of the first John Pound I ever saw. One of the first undergrounds I ever bought was Snarf number 6. It was in Bud Plant's catalog, and this was in it. I must have been like, 13 at the time. I did not like this. I was just like, what is this gobbledygook? This is nonsense. And it kind of is nonsense. It is gobbledygook, but it's fucking exquisite gobbledygook. Look at this first panel here. This is such amazing surreal art. Can't really tell what's going on, but I don't think it matters. Just luscious. The ink work on here kind of reminds me of Robert Williams a little when he used to do undergrounds. Just really impeccable laying down of ink on this page, this panel, I should say. So nice, so groovy. I guess this is called Comix. You can kind of read it in there. And then the rest of it, he uses collage, pop art. This is just him just having fun, just experimenting with all the shit you can do. Doesn't make any sense, but it's pretty fun to look at. Like this, the Michelin Man is chasing after that zip code guy from the post office. But the best thing is, though, just seeing him draw. You know, he's pretty, I like these collages, but this is another drawing by him. That's some nice stuff. Yeah, this is from 1975 as well. Crazy. I wonder if he did more of that stuff, you know, just for himself in his sketchbooks. That kind of bizarro stuff. This next one is from 1976. Once again, co-written. Oh, this one's all written by Dave Clark and art by John Pound. This was in that 1976 Underground Fear and Loathing, which were comics about Hunter S. Thompson. But I think they all gave him an alias. They didn't want to be sued, so it's Hunter S. Toxin. We see his editor assign him to go to the Southwest, find this old wacky Indian. Apparently he's using this crazy old drug. We want you to write about it. So Hunter S. Thompson, of course, packs up his speed and his wild turkey and his 100 rounds of ammo. And the story's called A Separate Unreality. So he finds this old wacky Indian. His name is Don Wand. He's a sorcerer. He shows him the wacky plant, and he distills it into a drink, and Hunter S. Thompson downs it. I like how he's mixing it up in this Kool-Aid bowl, and Hunter S. Thompson starts to trip. There's some pretty fun panels here. He's flying through the sky. He imagines he is. He sees Heckle and Jekyll. I like these like jagged panels here. Kind of duplicates just the randomness of being on a trip. The Yaki's kind of telling him, or Don Wand is kind of telling him like all the things that seem kind of cool about tripping, going on a vision quest or something. But in Hunter S. Thompson's mind, they're all terrible. Like he says, Don tells him, make contact with your animal allies. They're your friends. But Hunter sees Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner with bibs on and a fork and knife chasing him so they can eat him for dinner. Don says, learn to finally stop the world. But just like what would happen if you stopped the world, it would probably crack in two and everything on it would fall off. So that's what he envisions. It's not a comforting scene. We must all make sacrifices. And he's literally being chomped by this Aztec stone god, stone idol. I like this, though. He finally kind of shakes it off by pulling out a gun and just starts shooting everything he sees. This will scare those evil spirits. He's shooting Casper the Ghost right in the head and Wendy the Witch. So finally, it looks like he's coming down a little, and he runs away. He's just freaking out too hard. This really cool car pulls up, offers him a ride. It's this really well-drawn lizard man. And Hunter just says, hey, don't I know you from somewhere? And he gets back to the editorial offices of the magazine. And he says, so that's how it was, Chief. I don't know, Hunter. Sometimes I think you're living in a separate reality. And that's the little trick ending. It's the editor turns into Don Wand. And everything starts to get trippy. So I guess he's having a flashback or something. But once again, a really beautifully drawn story. So there you go, guys. Ground Pound Comics. I don't think it'll be a lot of money. It was in quarter bids all through my teen years and my 20s. But some really nice stuff, as you saw. It's also pretty thick. It's like a 48-page comic. And so it's a good deal, especially if you can find it cheap. Hope you enjoyed it, and I guess that's it for today's video. I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.